He's the voiceover studio engineer of the Stars in Los Angeles, California, a Virginia Tech grad with a knowledge of recording studios unmatched in his field. He's a voice actor from Buffalo, New York, with 30 years experience in recording studios and behind the mic. He solves people's home voiceover studio problems in the blink of an eye. Together, there's no studio problem they can't solve, and they'll do it for you tonight. Welcome to East West Audio Body Shop. Now, live from a basement in Buffalo and an office in L.A., here are Dan Leonard and George Whittam.
Good evening. I'm Dan Leonard in the East.
And I'm George Whittam in the West.
And together we're East West Audio Body Shop. All right. Well, what a fascinating week this has been.
You got that right.
Well, if things are a little confused tonight, George, you've been moving, right? You've gotten out of one place and you're into another, and you got it set up in time.
Yeah, I returned my U-Haul a half an hour ago. I mean, literally, I just returned the truck. So our lovely friends helped out tremendously and got us moved in smoothly today. The house is a shambles, but my studio I set up yesterday. So
good for you.
Ready.
we know where your priorities are. That's what we like to see.
Luckily, everybody else seems to agree.
Well, we're here to help solve your home studio problems. We've got a bunch of people who want to get on tonight and tell us what their problems are, and George and I will solve them. So if you have a question you'd like to get on the air with us in the next couple of weeks, what's that email address? It's EWABS1@gmail now.
Oh, yeah. Things keep switching on you guys. I know we're still getting all the death bolts together.
We're getting all the kinks out.
EWAB Shop.
EWABS Shop at Gmail. EWABS Shop with one S, right?
Yeah, EWAB Shop.
Okay.
EWAB Shop.
EWAB Shop. Of course, we're gonna have to open the EWAB Shop pretty soon because people want coffee mugs and T-shirts and all that stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so we're here, and we've got a bunch of people on, along with our special guest tonight, Joe Cipriano, who's going to tell us all about his amazing career and what it's like having a home studio and all the work that he does. And why don't we get right to it right now? Welcome to East West Audio Body Shop. Who's calling and from where?
Hi, this is Scott from Rochester, Minnesota.
Scott from Rochester, Minnesota. Okay, someplace colder than where I am.
Yeah, it's cold.
How cold is it there right now?
Oh, it's 30, 32.
Oh,
30, something like that.
That's nothing. Actually, it's actually colder here in Buffalo. Amazing.
We're ready for spring here.
Okay, and what's the temperature there, George?
Temperature here is a balmy 66 degrees.
Shut up. We don't want to hear about that. Okay, so all right. So, in the balmy reaches of Rochester, Minnesota, what's your problem?
Well, I switched to a Win 7 64-bit system.
That's your problem right there. So, good night, everybody.
I know. I found that afterwards. Win 7 64-bit system. Switched everything over to it with an M Audio Delta 1010 LT sound card, running Adobe Audition 3.
All right.
And I had some ongoing intermittent noise that would pop up on my recordings with really no... we couldn't troubleshoot it. We couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I could never anticipate it. I worked with the M Audio folks. I worked with Adobe folks, and we didn't come up with a resolve other than the theory that it was a Win 7 64-bit problem.
So what do you think we're going to be able to do for you?
Yeah, really.
Jeez.
I went back to XP Pro, and I still have some of that noise, although it's at a much lower level and a little more, it's easier to pick out than Win 7 was.
Is this the noise that you sent to me, Dan?
Yes, it is.
Let's see if we can.
Let's listen to this here.
Okay, here we go. Let's see if I can make this happen.
By being at the
Hang on.
staying true to its
It's not the
core values,
reverb.
Time Incorporated brands are resonating with its consumers like never before. With its 45 million weekly readers, no title may better represent this fact than People.
Well, that's a weird one.
That's the audio from the Win 7 system. Now, the last one I sent you was from XP. It's the same type of sound, but it's just a much lower. It's not as
not as high intensity.
Yeah, not as high. I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
so it could be an IRQ conflict, which is something that we deal with in Windows sometimes, which basically means that something is sharing duties. There's these things called IRQs, and I don't know all the technical mumbo jumbo about what an IRQ does and why. But what the IRQs do is they're basically how the software and the drivers and everything talk to the hardware. It's sort of a channel of information or channel of data. And so what happens is they can be shared with other devices, and sometimes they're shared with the wrong devices. And the two are taking up too much space in that channel. And you end up with these really strange glitches like what you're experiencing. Okay. Now, theoretically these days, with Windows 7, you're not supposed to have to worry about that too much because it's supposed to automatically, even XP, it's supposed to dole out the IRQs to all the hardware. It's supposed to all happen without anybody's interaction and be completely, automatic. But it's possible that it is being shared with another device. And that would be one place to check. Now, that would be checked from the control panel. So the control panel, let's see. Actually, if you right-click on My Computer and bring up the System menu at the bottom, I believe, and you should get to the computer settings, and you should be able to get to a hardware panel that shows you all the hardware that's plugged into the computer, and you should then be able to start viewing more details about IRQs.
Okay.
If I'm speaking Japanese, then you might want to do something with us off the air or start doing a little bit of Googling about this issue. But also, there's some really good websites that tell you how to optimize your computer for recording audio in Windows XP or Windows 7. Do a Google for optimizing your Windows XP for audio search.
Yeah, the real key is to try and do as little as possible while you're recording, because Windows 7 has so many things going on in it. Most of it's tuned into. It has to call Bill Gates every 5 minutes and say, "Do we have to update anything?" Well, wait a second. I got to call home. I got to call. That's what Windows 7 does, and there's a lot of things going on in there. So one of the most important things you need to do is make sure that you're only running your recording software and try and shut off as much other stuff as you can. Because it's taking up so many other resources. And Audition 3 should not be taking up a whole lot of resources. It's not that much of a memory hog. So, well, whatever the problem is, apparently you've got a little bit of it done, so we have a little bit more of a clue on that. So we want you to try all those things, and we want you to report back.
I will do that, and I'll get back to you.
Very good.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for
calling in. Great show.
in.
Enjoy the show. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. It's amazing how how Windows 7 has been an absolute disaster for pro audio, and a lot of the calls that I get and the emails and questions we get it's noise. It's noise like that. It's hissing. It's sometimes it'll change inputs on you, and we're still trying to figure out why it is that it does this. It's got some weird priorities to it. We don't have that problem with our Macs, by the way, but we're not going to be preachy about the Macs. We just know that you plug things in and they tend to work. Windows is very, it gives you lots of versatility with lots of different programs and lots of different things, but it has its shortcomings.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
I'm a Windows user going way back, but I've blogged about this and I've written a lot about it and why I feel as strongly as I do about migrating to Mac for production. And we call this, when you're doing work for a living, being paid to get that work done, that's production. And when it's production, that's a different animal than home use, experimenting, gaming, messing around. So that's a whole different story.
That's right.
Should we go to the next caller?
We should. Who's we have our next caller on here?
Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome to East West Audio Body Shop. Who's calling and from where?
It's Connie from San Diego.
San Diego, just down the road from you, George.
I know.
So, Yes. Well, it's great to have you with us, and it's sunny in San Diego now, right?
Let me look. Hold on. Yeah, it's still sunny. You can see it behind George. We have the same weather.
Okay. Every time I'm in San Diego, it rains. I haven't quite figured this out. We've been to the San Diego Zoo. The elephants were wet. The polar bears were wet. Of course, they're in their wet tank, but it's always raining there, and I can't wait to come when it's actually sunny. It actually rained when we went to Legoland. It's amazing how these things happen. Anyway, you say you've got a problem with some Skype or something? What exactly was your question?
It's not Skype. I have a phobia of my webcam and actually using my good mic and plugging in the webcam, because then it screws things up and you have to go back in and reset things, which is kind of what you were talking about, George, with the control panel thing. And I don't want to change things. I just want to make it work and make a good sound and not have to go and worry about when I fire up my recording, to actually do a job, having to go in and go, oh my God, how do I do this? How do I get back to where I was?
Right. Well,
so that's why I don't have my webcam on my recording tower. I use my webcam on my other business tower and just chat with people, on Skype. So
right. Well, I mean, the reason behind why you don't want to do that is a justifiable concern. I mean, the more things you're adding into the mix, the more things that can go wrong. So I can understand the apprehension to not want to have Skype on the same computer that you're trying to record with. I know in the Mac world, they work pretty harmoniously together, and they're known to do pretty well together as long as you're running, I think, Windows XP or better. You just have to experiment and try it and just see how stable it is. But you should not have to be switching things back and forth for when you are running Skype and when you're not running Skype. You should be able to leave everything as it is all the time in your recording application and set your settings in Skype. And as long as your computer has all of its hardware and everything plugged in all the time, it gets stickier when you have a laptop and you're moving and unplugging and plugging and unplugging and removing devices all the time. Skype will then use whatever the last thing you plugged in. So if you plugged in, the last thing you plugged in was a USB audio device, Skype will start using that. That's where it gets confusing. But your Pro Audio software, your DAW, will behave pretty well and use the same software or those same audio drivers each time usually, and so you shouldn't have to worry much about that.
Well, maybe it's just been so long, as Dan and I have discussed over the last few minutes on email, the last couple of hours, is that my system hasn't been really updated in about 10 years. I replaced a microphone, and everything else has just been the same. And so a few years, well, I guess it was when we were trying to do that Christmas, night before Christmas thing for the VOBB a few years ago, I couldn't get, somehow I was using my 8-bit, a microphone on my webcam to try and record the night before Christmas, and it, sounded like crap. So I finally was able to hook up my regular mic to make it work. And then it was like pulling teeth to get back to, to do a session. So I must have been doing something wrong.
Well, the thing with Skype, there's a number of other issues with Skype that you have to deal with. Depending on what input you have, like George was saying, it should be very easy to just go into your Skype preferences, select what your input device is, when you go into audio video preferences, and you just click on the whatever is your sound input. And if you've got your digital interface in there, if your microphone is plugged into, say, a MicPort Pro or an M Audio box, something along those lines, then that should be your input, and you should be able to use the camera with that microphone, and it should work fine. And then when you go back to record, as George was saying, you've got to be able to go back and switch it back, but it's usually just one mouse click.
I think we just lost her, actually. She just hung up,
okay.
But that's okay. Hopefully she'll tune back in, but we need to move on. So
that's true.
We need to move on. But I'm going to do, everybody, I'm going to be, before I do that, I'm going to let everybody know that we are going to, on purpose, Well, on purpose, we are going to stop the broadcast because I want to add Dan's picture back in. And because of a limitation of Ustream, I can't do that while I'm broadcasting. So when we go to the break here, I'm going to stop the broadcast, add Dan back in so you can all see him, and we'll be back to normal again.
Right. Well, I better take a shower then. We'll be back. We've got more guests coming up and Joe Cipriano at the bottom of the hour, so stay tuned.